Hello, back again on the Top Recap channel. This time I will tell a movie's entitled Don't Move. Let's get straight into the storyline. The story begins with a woman named Iris waking up early in the morning. While her husband is still fast asleep, Iris has already changed into her training clothes. Surprisingly, she goes out without her mobile phone, but only a pocket knife and a toy boat. Driving her car, she set off along a mountain road to a nature spot surrounded by wilderness. After parking her car in front of the park gate, Iris continued her journey on foot. She traveled along a rocky road and climbed a cliff until she reached the top of the cliff. As it turned out, at the top of the cliff, there was a memorial deliberately made in a large tree. On the monument, there is a photo figurine of a small boy. Iris was also seen carving the initials C, I, and M on the tree. It was unclear what she had in mind. She walked slowly towards the edge of the cliff without fear. Iris stared at the abyss below her, ready to jump any moment. Before she could do so, a man suddenly appeared. Although they didn't know each other, the man casually engaged Iris in conversation. He introduced himself as Richard. On the way to that place, Richard also saw the memorial and asked Iris about its meaning. However, Iris did not want to discuss it. Seeing that Iris seemed to be having problems, Richard tried to persuade her to talk to him instead of doing something stupid like what she was thinking.
I saw the memorial back there. You're not going to step back. Why don't you at least tell me your name?
However, Iris firmly refused. Since Iris still didn't want to talk, Richard finally decided to speak first. He tells her about the tragic accident that happened to him and his girlfriend, Chloe. Richard hoped the story would make Iris feel she was not alone in facing problems. After hearing Richard's story, Iris began to open up a little and told him that she had lost her only son, Mateo, who died on the cliff. She came to this place initially because Iris intended to follow her son to heaven.
And I just went on gathering wildflowers. The world takes what it wants.
However, thanks to her chat with Richard, Iris temporarily canceled that intention. She decided to go down the mountain with Richard. After saying goodbye, Iris immediately went to her car to prepare to leave. However, she found that her car door could not be opened because Richard's car blocked it. At that moment, Richard got out and approached Iris. But instead of helping, he suddenly tased Iris until she fainted.
Looks like I blocked you in.
Looks like... That's okay, I can, go around.
After that, Richard immediately tied Iris's hands and feet so she could not escape. He put Iris in his car and took her away from the place. Moments later, Iris woke up and realized that she had been taken hostage by Richard. She tried to call her husband through her smartwatch, but her attempt failed as there was no signal in the mountainous area. Not losing her mind, Iris remembered that she had brought a pocket knife when she left in the morning. She tried to cut the rope binding her hands with the pocket knife. While trying, Iris invited Richard to chat to distract him. During the chat, Iris learns that the reason Richard is targeting her is because she resembles his dead girlfriend, Chloe.
Tell me about Chloe. And Chloe? Was she pretty?
You remind me of her.
Soon after, Iris managed to cut the bonds on her hands. Without further ado, Iris immediately attacked Richard and made the car they were traveling in swerve until it hit a tree in front of him.
Fuck you are.
Iris took advantage of the accident to run away. However, Richard swiftly stops her, and they get back into a fierce fight. Fortunately, Iris managed to get out of the car and cut the ties on her legs. However, when she tried to escape again, Richard was already standing in front of her. Iris continued screaming for help while walking away, but Richard seemed calm. Richard said, "It's useless for you to shout for help because soon you won't be able to escape from me." Hearing that statement, Iris was confused. Why did Richard seem so confident that she could not escape? Richard then revealed that during Iris's unconsciousness, he had injected her with a drug that would paralyze her body within 20 minutes. Not only would she be unable to move, but over time, Iris would also lose her voice until she could no longer speak.
Shut down soon.
You poisoned me?
Once it kicks in, you have about 20 minutes before you're completely paralyzed. Minute 15, your legs will give out altogether. 18, your breathing will become labored. And just before everything shuts down on you, your voice.
Running is only gonna make it work faster.
Iris didn't want to just give herself up to the crazy psychopath. She chose to run into the forest and try to escape as quickly as possible from Richard's pursuit. She used the remaining 20 minutes to escape as far as possible from Richard before her body was completely paralyzed.
And we'll have the whole weekend together.
Iris continued to walk without stopping, getting into the forest that seemed to have no end. Meanwhile, the drug inside her body began to react to make her legs difficult to move. And now the remaining 20 minutes are almost up, making Iris's body condition begin to show signs of paralysis. And because she could no longer walk, she was forced to hide behind trees and bushes.
Hope you found a good hiding place!
Afraid of being caught, Iris finally decided to move again and threw herself into the river. For the time being, she managed to survive the psychopath's pursuit. Her stiff body continued to be carried by the river along the forest. Fortunately, the upper part of her body could still be moved, so she managed to grab onto a tree trunk to return to land safely. At this point, Iris only had 10 minutes left before her body was completely paralyzed. In fact, her voice was also starting to fade. By the end of the 10 minutes, Iris was completely paralyzed, and she could only lie on the ground. Not long after, there was the sound of a lawnmower slowly approaching Iris's body. Fortunately, the mower stopped before it could hurt Iris. The grandfather, driving the mower, was shocked to see Iris lying on the ground and immediately checked her condition. Knowing that Iris couldn't speak, the grandfather tried to communicate with her through eye signals. He made a deal. If Iris blinked once, it meant yes. If she blinked twice, it meant no.
Are you able to move at all? No. Can't move. Can't talk, am I right?
Then, the grandfather took Iris to his house and intended to call the police to help her. However, not long after that, someone knocked on his door. At that moment, Iris blinked repeatedly, asking the grandfather not to tell him she was there. When the door was opened, it was Richard. In front of the grandfather, Richard said that he was looking for his runaway wife. However, as he was aware of Iris's danger code, he remained cautious and asked Richard to wait outside the house. Just as the grandfather was about to call the police, Richard suddenly entered the house without permission, surprising the grandfather with his rude behavior. Because of Richard's suspicious behavior, Grandpa said he would call for help, and they could wait outside the house until help arrived. However, Richard insisted on staying inside, and even borrowed his grandfather's mobile phone, claiming it was lost. Not only that, he also pretended to tell a sad story so that Grandpa would feel sorry for him and not be suspicious of him anymore. When Richard told his bullshit story, it turned out that the grandfather had hidden Iris behind the sofa that Richard was now sitting on.
She hates when I yell, but we were arguing. You know, the roads around here, they're hard enough to navigate when you're not distracted. Refuses to move, refuses to talk.
Richard is indeed clever and able to manipulate people with his sad stories. In fact, Grandpa almost leaked Iris's whereabouts. However, at the same time, Richard's mobile phone, which he had said he had lost, suddenly rang. At that moment, Grandpa finally realized that Richard was lying. Since his lie had been discovered, Richard stopped pretending and forced Grandpa to tell him Iris's whereabouts. However, knowing Richard was dangerous, Grandpa attacked Richard on the spot.
Give me the phone first. I'm gonna kill you.
Unfortunately, Grandpa's life was not saved when Richard attacked him and stabbed him with a knife mercilessly. After not finding Iris, Richard left and set fire to the house to remove the evidence. However, when he was about to leave, he accidentally saw the window curtain that suddenly opened and closed by itself. Then, Richard realized that Iris was hiding in the house. Richard, the crazy psychopath, captured Iris again, and this time, he placed her in the passenger seat right next to the driver's seat. He also buckled her in so she couldn't escape again. On the way, Richard received a phone call. But before answering the phone, he pinched Iris's hand to ensure that she could not talk. As it turned out, his family called him. His wife told him they planned to visit him tomorrow because their daughter wanted to go camping with her father. Not wanting to make his family suspicious, Richard agreed to the request.
Gotta celebrate this report card.
Great. Should be there about 10. Love you.
Love you too.
On the way, Richard checked that his car was running low on petrol. Inevitably, he was forced to make a quick stop at the nearest petrol station. When he was about to fill up the petrol, he was notified that the card machine was broken, so he had to pay directly with cash. Since Iris could not move, Richard felt safe leaving her alone in the car. As Richard queued in the shop, Iris secretly tried to move her hands to unbuckle the seatbelt. With great difficulty, the seatbelt was released. At the same time, a little boy suddenly approached the car. When she saw the boy, Iris immediately thought of her late son. However, the boy's mother came to pick him up and saw Iris, who stared at them without saying anything. Meanwhile, Richard exited the shop and realized Iris was trying to escape again. He hurriedly put Iris's seatbelt back on and quickly stepped on the gas before the people there started to suspect him. Finally, they continued their journey back. As it turned out, Richard returned to where he had left the car earlier, as he was busy chasing Iris into the forest. Upon arrival, he quickly changed his clothes and grabbed a syringe and a rope. He hid them in the back of his car, not wanting to get caught. Then, he took some tools from the grandfather's truck that he had stolen to fix his broken car. Not long after, a patrol car arrived. A policeman approached Richard's car and saw Iris in it. Unfortunately, Richard immediately noticed the policeman's presence. The police came because they got a report from someone suspicious of Richard's truck. The person who contacted the police turned out to be the mother of the little boy Iris met at the gas station earlier. Apparently, the little boy's mother realized that Iris needed help. When interrogated by the police, Richard tried to evade them by giving various excuses that sounded convincing. Even so, the police did not immediately believe him and continued to ask Richard several questions.
So you mind telling me exactly what happened here? Yeah, no reason to get smart now.
I'm sorry.
You didn't call 911 or a tow truck? Maybe she can clear some of this up for us.
When the police were about to open the car window, Richard tried to distract the police from talking to Iris. However, Iris did not give up. She tried to speak with the rest of her strength, even though she was stammering. The police finally managed to find the syringe. Richard immediately attacked him before the police could fight back. As he did with the previous victim, Richard burned the policeman's body and his patrol car. After that, he and Iris immediately rushed away. Although still in a weakened condition, Iris finally spoke normally again. However, instead of negotiating with Richard, Iris provokes him by saying that Richard must have gone mad due to the accident that left him helpless for 2 months. Provoked by Iris's words, Richard is upset. But, being a psychopath, he never felt that what he did was wrong. With great confidence, Richard told her that he enjoyed watching his girlfriend dying. He felt like a god who could take anyone's life at will. Apparently, Richard had a toxic relationship with his ex-girlfriend. That's what made him not feel sad about his girlfriend's death and turned him into a cold-blooded psychopath.
Actually, I realized I had. And he was me. Thank you.
Not satisfied with provoking Richard, Iris talked about his family this time. Iris hopes Richard will let go by reminding him that his family awaits his return. However, the plan fails. Richard gets even more upset when Iris brings his daughter into the conversation. An emotional Richard decided to finish Iris off as quickly as possible.
You must love your family very much. Your daughter.
Don't talk about my daughter.
Change your plans, Iris.
After that, Richard stopped his car in front of a remote lake. Before bringing Iris to her death, Iris suddenly put up a fight. She managed to stick an injection containing paralyzing medicine into Richard. Apparently, Iris secretly took the injection when Richard was busy taking care of the body of the previous policeman. However, unfortunately, her hands struggled to inject the drug because her muscle motor system had not fully recovered. Feeling frustrated with her helpless condition, Iris asked why Richard didn't just let her jump off the cliff instead of torturing her like this. After all, she would eventually die anyway. However, Richard said that it was not him who stopped her, but Iris herself, who decided not to end her life. For him, his meeting with Iris was destiny's connection.
Fate. You were meant for me.
Bullshit.
Not wanting to waste more time, Richard immediately moved Iris to a small boat and took it to the lake's center. On the boat, Iris kept crying because she knew she would soon die. As a final request, Iris asked Richard to retrieve her son Mateo's toy boat, which she had brought in her trouser pocket this morning. However, when Richard wanted to retrieve it,
I'm not sorry.
before Richard returned to the boat, Iris managed to grab Richard's gun and shoot the psychopath in time. In the end, Iris managed to defeat the crazy psychopath. However, the trouble didn't end there. Not long after, the boat leaked due to their fight. Because her hands were still bound and her legs were immobilized, Iris couldn't get up until the boat was filled with water. She could only hold her breath for as long as possible before the boat finally sank to the bottom of the lake. While bound, Iris survived until her body could move normally again. With all her might, she swam to the edge of the lake. At the film's end, we see Richard still alive and stranded on the other side of the lake. However, his condition is much worse, and he can no longer be saved. At the sight of the critical Richard, there was no regret, pity, or guilt that Iris felt after putting the psychopath on the brink of death, only relief and gratitude because the crazy psychopath had made her realize that she had to continue living for the sake of her beloved late son.